Hey SmartPak fans, I'm SmartPaker Dan, and she's Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak staff veterinarian and medical director, and we are here to answer your horse health questions asked and voted on by you. Now, with the holidays right around the corner, we do want to give you a little heads up that Dr. Gray will not be here next month to record an episode.
This is true.
Are you going to do something exciting?
Not really.
A lot of traveling, family visiting, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we do have something really exciting planned for that January episode. Do you think we should tell them now?
I think we should.
You think we should?
Yeah.
Nah, that's too easy. I think we're going to make you wait till the end.
Oh!
She's the nice one, I'm sorry.
Good cop, bad cop.
But it's really great. You're going to like it. But that doesn't mean we still don't need your questions for the following episodes, so make sure to take the time to do that.
Yep.
Just because you've asked once and it hasn't been answered doesn't mean you shouldn't ask again, because I know there's a lot that you are dying to answer.
You're killing me. Yeah.
So make sure you take the time to do that and vote for it. But for this time, it's time to get to our questions for this month.
Let's go.
So question number 1 was actually asked twice by Pete and Barkley on YouTube. So Pete and Barkley wants to know, there was an outbreak of strangles at horse shows in my area, and a horse at my barn got it before moving to my barn 3 weeks ago, and now multiple horses have it. I'm thinking about moving my horse to a new barn, but I'm not sure when it'll be safe to do so, considering the disease stays with the horse for a while after the horse no longer shows symptoms.
Right.
What would your recommendation for moving be?
Okay, that's the first
That's
question
the first
that he asked.
one.
All right.
And then the second one he asked on
He's
YouTube.
clearly worried about this, as he
Should be, absolutely. So then the second question was, our barn recently got a new horse who is a carrier of strangles, and a few of the horses have been infected. What would you recommend to clean everything, and what would you get rid of and replace, i.e. halters, leads, water buckets?
Yeah.
Also, I heard horses can be carriers of the bacteria for a long time, sometimes years, after they are fully recovered. What would you do if that was the case, and are there any further cures to preventing that? Ooh.
Yes, so I'm glad that he wrote back in and said, and another thing.
Yeah.
And with these extra questions, because they're really good. Now, the good news is there is silver lining. Someone just wrote a really, really good, comprehensive, detailed article about strangles. Do you know who that might be?
Was it you?
It was me. And it's in the Horse Health Library, and it's called Strangles, and I printed it out because I wanted to just hit some highlights to address his particular concerns. So one of them is this notion of horses being able to shed it, and you can't tell that they're even sick. And so experts believe that one of the greater sources of strangles is horses that are in the early signs of the disease. They're in the early stages of the disease, and they're not showing signs yet.
Okay.
So they've caught it, and it's incubating,
But the symptoms haven't expressed themselves yet.
And then the next one is they're in the early stages of recovery, but they're still harboring the bacteria. And then the last one is the one that this person is really concerned about, the persistent long-term carriers of the disease, which is unique to strangles, who remain asymptomatic, so they don't show signs themselves, but they can shed the bacteria to other horses for months or years.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, so when strangles gets on a property, it's unfortunately on the property. Experts estimate that 10 to 40% of horses who have had strangles silently carry the disease and are able to transmit it without showing signs.
And 40% is a high number.
4 out of 10, yeah, that's a high number. That's unfortunate. So he asked about, are there any recent advances or technology or something?
Further cures to preventing that.
As far as cures, no, but there's been a lot of recent advances in diagnosis.
Okay.
So now vets are able to screen horses as they come into properties. They can also, when a horse has recovered and there's no signs showing that it's resolved, they can test the horse and say, are you still harboring the bacteria? So that has become now the gold standard, best practice of when a farm can be cleared to be reopened for horses moving in and out. Strangles is now a reportable disease, which means your veterinarian by law is required to tell the state authorities, and they will shut down a property. So moving in and out is not really an option, and it's not a good idea anyway, because the same thing will happen to the new place that happened to your place. It's the movement of a horse that has it and shedding it, and then they have an outbreak.
And that's what I like is, in this question, really was not only just concerned about his own horse, but how to stop the prevention of it going forward and like the moving
and
of
he knows that horses have it, harbor it silently, and can shed it at will. It sheds, and it doesn't stay around a lot. Horse-to-horse contact, what we call direct contact, is one way that it gets spread, but the other is indirect contact, and that's by one of my favorite words, fomites. So a fomite is an inanimate object, can be anything, can be brushes, tack, equipment, cleaning equipment like manure forks. It can be blankets, water buckets, feed buckets, I mean, you name it, that the bacteria could get on, because remember, horses with strangles are coughing and snotting. There's a lot of stuff to get on. And that's what he asked about. How do you clean it? What do you clean and what do you throw away?
Yes, exactly. What do you recommend replacing?
So clearly they're involving their veterinarian in this. I mean, you have to, because your veterinarian has been trained in the quarantining of new arrivals and the isolation of sick horses and all sorts of biosecurity practices. So he or she knows the answer to this question and can help you. We'll say things like, in order to disinfect something, you must clean it first.
Okay.
The disinfecting is not the cleaning. So you clean with soap and water, and then you disinfect.
Got it.
And you can only do that process on things that are not porous. So wood is a terrible medium. It's a great medium for bacteria. Like they tell you not to use wood for cutting boards anymore.
Yep.
Okay.
Because they harbor everything.
Yeah, you can't clean them. So wood stalls and
everything at the barn, basically.
was tough to clean, disinfect. Things that are plastic, your feed buckets and your water troughs and wheelbarrows. I mean, all these things get contaminated, right? The plastic manure forks can be cleaned. The wood part is a problem. Brushes, I guess I would toss.
Yeah.
Lead ropes, there's no way. One of the things you can do, I found this really interesting, is there's 3 distinct herds at a farm, at a facility that is having an outbreak. There's the healthy horses that were not exposed. So some barns, you know, are big and there might be 3 different barns, and say the sick horse is only at this barn. These horses might not have been exposed, especially if the help doesn't move there. But if the help cleans all 3 barns,
then you've
and they don't have
everyone.
one training barn, a completely separate training barn with all different people, that's the best. But if personnel moves from building to building and they take their equipment,
then it doesn't really matter if the sick horse is in this barn,
no,
because you've kind of contaminated.
Then you're in the next herd, and they're still healthy, but they've been exposed. And those horses you have to temp every day, because fever is one of the first signs that something is brewing or cooking. And then the third group, obviously, is the sick horses, the ones that are showing signs. So the healthy, not exposed, you can label everything, like put a piece of green tape on that barn. All the equipment in that barn's green. The healthy but exposed would be yellow or orange, and then the sick are red.
Okay.
Yeah, so you've got a system of tracking which equipment and that is to be thrown away afterwards or to be disinfected, or all this stuff is good.
And I don't think you realize how much equipment you use on a horse until you start have to be like aware of it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, your shoes. Your shoes can become contaminated, can become fomites if you walk from a sick place to a healthy place. So the rule is, if you're cleaning, feeding, doing anything, you move from healthy exposed to sick. That's the order of touching horses.
So end with those ones last.
Yeah, the sick ones last. Yeah.
I did want to touch on the last part of this question, though. So I think what he was trying to get at was, if you have a horse who's a carrier but doesn't show symptoms of it, and you want to move barns, or like, how do you kind of be like a good steward in the community?
Yep. I have the answer for you. It's in this article. So I would encourage Pete and Barkley and anyone who's interested to read this article and spend some time with it. And I'll just read a quote. In order to identify long-term carriers of the bacteria, these long-term carriers that appear outwardly healthy, experts recommend that a sample be obtained from the guttural pouch. These are pouches on the sides inside the horse, left and right, they attach to the middle ear.
Okay.
Yeah. Using endoscopy, as then the area can be visually examined for inflammation, even for pus, at the same time that sample is taken for testing.
Okay.
So once you have that visual examination via endoscopy and the testing, then a horse can be cleared to be moved.
Okay.
So
So it's not like your horse is going to be a carrier, can't go anywhere. Just do your due diligence, get the testing done, and then you're good to go from
and then
there.
you can relax and be relieved. Yeah.
And I'm sure we can put a link for this article in the
Yes.
description. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's something we can actually do, but we'll make we'll make it happen, I'm sure.
We're making promises here, right and left. We don't know.
So that was great. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Moving on to question number 2 was submitted by Sophia Gianforti, and this is actually her second time asking, and she submitted a question via Instagram. And Sophia, I do want to point out though, we've noticed that you've not claimed your gift card yet, so
Oh.
make sure to reach out to our customer care
Yeah.
team so you can get that. The holidays are
Right.
right around the corner, so you want to
You
do some good
earned
shopping. So this month, she would like to know, what is equine influenza and what can we do to treat it?
Okay, so another respiratory disease. This one's a little bit different than strangles in that it you don't have the problem of the long-term carriers.
Okay.
And strangles was bacterial, influenza is viral. It's extremely contagious. The horses that tend to get it are the unvaccinated, the young, like less than 5 years old, and horses that are under stressed, maybe immunosuppressed, and that commingle and move around. So racetracks
Okay.
would be a place.
Young horses
showground,
under stress,
yeah.
weaker immune system.
I mean, that just screams racetracks. But you know, showgrounds. So those are places you think of. I'm trying to think what else she needs to know. She wants to know how to treat it.
Yep.
You know, it's a virus. So antibiotics are not going to be what you'd reach for. In this case, rest is really the #1 thing that vets say horses need. And there's a rule of thumb for it. For every day that the horse has a fever, and the fever is an influenza because this virus can be very high, like 105, 106.
Wow.
Yeah, super high. For every day that the horse has a fever, that's a week that the horse needs to rest.
Okay.
Because the respiratory tract, the tissue, the lining, will be sloughed, and it takes 21 days to rebuild that. If you start back to work too soon with these horses, they can be set up for a lifetime of chronic airway disease.
Wow.
Yeah, so rest is really important. A well-ventilated, clean, dust-free environment, good food and water, although they may not feel like eating. That's one of their signs, is being off feed, lethargy or depressed. Just they kind of feel stiff and sore and achy like people do when they get the flu.
Okay.
They have a dry, hacking, non-productive cough. So vets will often give them non-steroidals like butanvalamine to make them feel better and to reduce the fever. But it's trying to get them to eat and drink, and that's part of helping them feel better. Is when you feel better, then you'll take in some food.
So quarantining is the same
Absolutely,
principle?
absolutely. While this is not a reportable disease, quarantine is when a healthy horse moves to a new facility and you quarantine for 3 weeks to make sure that they're not sick before you introduce them to the rest of the horses on the property. Isolation is what you do when a horse becomes sick or breaks with disease. You separate them from the rest of the horses and you take care of them. And you do the green, yellow, red tape and identify, like you reserve equipment that is only used for them, and you may need to throw it out when you're done or really clean and disinfect it well.
I would probably just throw it out. I am such like a hypochondriac for myself.
Yeah, it's probably good practice.
What I did like though that you mentioned for both the question 1 and question 2 was taking temperatures.
Yes.
And I think that's something that people probably should even do beforehand, just kind of what your horse normally runs at, because some horses, I'm assuming like people, can run a little warmer, colder.
Yeah, I've told this story before, but when I got Newman, I said I need to get a baseline of his vitals, and so I was taking his temperature, and it was 101. I'm like, oh no, he's sick. And
Yeah.
But I took it for 2 weeks, and it was 101. And I'm like, So he runs hot.
Yeah.
And now I don't panic, or when I'm gone and someone takes it, and they're like, he's 101. It's fine. That's what it is. When he's 102, then there's something happening.
So always make sure to have that baseline like you were saying. I think
Yeah.
that'll help you kind of work through these conditions and know where you guys are at. So So on to question number 3.
Okay.
This was submitted by Ashley on Ask the Vet form at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. This was actually Ashley's 3rd win. She previously asked questions about the clubfoot and clicker training.
Ah.
So Ashley, I would like to know, are you trying to become a vet? Like, you've got some good questions here.
Or trainer.
Or trainer.
Yeah. Or farrier.
But we are loving them, so keep them coming. But this time, she would like to know, are there any herbal dewormers, supplements, or ways to keep a horse healthy and worm-free? I know there are chemical commercial wormers, but is there another option? Okay. I know this is one of your favorite topics, so I'm just going to sit back.
Well, so we brought a bunch of the chemical dewormers. These are all FDA approved, safe, and effective. We even brought one of the fecal egg count tests here. But what I'm going to read to you is from the parasite control guidelines that are published by the American Association of Equine Practitioners. We shorten to AAP. Anybody can read these. They're available on their website. You got to click around a little bit, but you can find them. They have a section in the parasite control guidelines called alternative remedies. Okay. So these are not my words. This is what AAP official guidelines say.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, because I'm not sure it's the answer she's looking for. So an increasing number of so-called organic or herbal dewormers are appearing in tack shops and online, but the efficacy of these products has never been demonstrated in formal controlled evaluations or studies. These products exist primarily because they exploit differences in the labeling requirements for drug versus non-drugs. Before a drug can earn label claims for activity against parasites, the fact must be proven to the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, by extensive efficacy and safety testing. Once a dewormer is approved by the FDA, the claims that can be made in advertising that drug are regulated by the FDA, and that's what all of these are. In contrast, products that are not considered drugs do not require FDA approval before marketing, and so the advertisers of non-FDA approved products can say just about anything they want, and their products don't have to be effective. So some of the ingredients that I am familiar with that have claims to control parasites are diatomaceous earth, garlic, clove. I've even seen pumpkin seeds. None of these have studies in any species that show that they are effective. So you would be, if you do this because you are concerned about the safety of these, there's no benefit to your horse, and in fact, it's a false sense of security.
So, to answer a little bit of a question, yes, there are options out there. However, they might not actually be effective because they don't have the studies behind them to prove any sort of effectiveness.
Well, the question is, are there any herbal wormers, supplements, or other ways to keep a horse healthy and worm-free? As far as herbal dewormers, no. Now, I'm going to read one more sentence for you from this.
Okay.
And then we're going to leave it. The environmental control of worms using nematophagous fungi.
I love when you say big words.
Has shown promising results. Several researchers have used these fungi that are harmless to people and the environment. Unfortunately, these biological control agents are not commercially available at present.
Okay.
I'm done.
I'm not going to touch that after that.
Okay, so herbal dewormers, no. Environmental control, maybe.
Well, that was a great question. Thank you for sending that over, Ashley. It's one of her favorite topics, so it always makes her very happy to answer those. So question number 4 was also submitted by Ashley on Ask the Vet form. The second win for this month. So Ashley, you've figured out a great strategy on how to get your questions answered. So Ash would like to know this time, at what age should a horse get their first set of vaccinations? We did have a comment on the community comment from Avery Powell, and she said, I recently adopted a wild Mustang yearling from the BLM land, and I would like to know if he needs his vaccinations now. Okay,
and that comment was helpful because it shows you that the age, the breed, the location, the history, if you know it or if it's unknown, all those things go into when the veterinarian helps you decide when should a horse have vaccinations, whether it's a young horse or an adult. Going back to the American Association of Equine Practitioners, the AAP is very helpful. They also have vaccination guidelines, surprise, surprise. They talk about what's called core vaccinations, and those are
Okay.
the ones that every horse should get because they're, the vaccine itself is safe and effective. The disease is either very serious, maybe fatal, like a rabies. I mean, there's no treatment, so the best thing to do is prevent. And also they're ubiquitous, like they're everywhere, and you don't. They're also not contagious between horses.
Okay.
Like they might be in the ground. Tetanus would be the example. Other ones on their core list are Eastern and Western sleeping sickness and West Nile virus. So those are now in all 50 states, and it doesn't really matter if you're the only horse living on a property and it's just a mosquito flying by and taking a bite, and you've got it. You don't have to leave the farm to get those. So those are the core vaccines.
Okay.
There's also risk-based vaccines, and that's like Strangles and flu rhino and Potomac horse fever and some other ones. And those have to do with where you live in the country and what your exposure is.
So let's say you had a horse that might be showing and traveling a lot.
Yeah.
They might have to go into the other group with the risk factors because they're now
Right,
exposed
and
to
if
more.
you're showing at a U.S. equestrian recognized show, there's the new vaccine rule. Well, I'll say it's new, it's been a couple years now. But and that rule in essence says that you must have proof that your horse has had flu and rhino vaccinations within 6 months of being on the property, or you could be asked to leave. So
you do not want that to happen.
you do not want that to happen. But her question gets to, I think she understands that a mare that has been vaccinated passes along antibodies to the foal in the colostrum
Yes.
in the first 24 to 48 hours. And so when you vaccinate the foal, if you vaccinate a foal in the first month, the maternal antibodies are going to recognize the vaccine as foreign and eat it up and say, took care of that invader, and then it didn't have time to set up an immune response in a foal. So the problem is timing the maternal antibodies going, decreasing over time below the level of protection.
Okay.
And then giving a vaccine such that the body develops its defenses. It takes about 2 weeks. And so when the maternal antibody dies off, the foal's own antibody is there to protect it. That's the tricky part.
That is so cool. Okay, so we have to find out when the support it's getting from the mare originally is kind of dying off, so that it can then start building its own support.
Right.
That sounds like something you should definitely work in your vet on.
It is, and we'll hold this up, but there's a sheet for, you see there's 2 columns. One is if the mare was vaccinated, one is if the mare is not vaccinated.
Okay.
Because if the mare is not vaccinated, then you get to start, or you should start earlier with the foal, because there's not the maternal antibodies to deal with. You just have to wait till the foal's own system can begin to build antibodies.
That is very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So not one dead set age.
Them's,
Work with your vet
them's
vet
the
on
kind
it.
of things we're learning in vet school.
It served you well. Well, hopefully that was helpful. Moving on to question number 5, submitted by Jen Marusa on Instagram. And she would like to know, how do I know what supplements to start my horse on? These are like all your favorite questions this month.
But not an infectious one.
Not
so,
no.
So all the infectious, contagious stuff is done. Okay, any comments from anybody or just?
No, that was it.
Okay. So
All you.
all me and you, because you're on the phones, you get this a
Yes.
lot. So I'm expecting you to jump in here. But when I get this question, and I get it a lot, it's probably the second most common question I get asked, and I say, well, the first thing is make sure your horse's diet is completely balanced. And so it's always forage first, and then it's making sure that they have the right amount of calories or energy for the work that they're doing and to maintain their weight. And then I make sure that the vitamins and minerals and protein meets the NRC levels. I like to balance my fats, so make sure that I have more omega-3s and omega-6, at least like a 2 or 4 to 1 ratio.
Do you want to touch on that, why that ratio is important?
Well, because omega-6s, while you need both, the omega-6s tend to lead to inflammatory reactions in the body, and so you don't want that to be the primary reactions happening. So you need the omega-3s to balance those out, and so we feed, many of the feeds we give horses today are loaded with omega-6s. Grain is very high in omega-6. So if you do feed your horse grain, then it's really important to throw in some omega-3s, and you get those from like flaxseed and chia seed and marine sources, fish oil, algae. So, like that?
Yes,
you mean?
exactly.
Okay.
Well, I think that's something that a lot of people necessarily consider as far as omega-6s and omega-3s. Like people feed corn oil and things of that nature.
Right, which is very high in omega-6s,
yes.
yeah.
So it could be setting the horse up for not success.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. And then always make sure my horse has salt. And I'm not a fan of salt blocks or licks because I think that they're made for the rough tongues of cattle. So I like to top dress my salt about a tablespoon a day, 2 tablespoons, and then now I can think about supplements. So now I look at my horse and I go, what areas does he need support in, or what is he just not good at? Now I happen to have a horse who's got a lot of problems, but he has great feet. So I don't supplement with biotin. He's not on a hoof supplement.
Okay.
It's like the one thing he's not on. But he has muscle problems, so he gets extra vitamin E and magnesium.
Okay.
He's in heavy work, so he's on a joint supplement. He has had colic surgery, so while he's not eligible for colic care, he does have a joint digestive supplement. So I just begin to think of what areas, because of what I do with my horse, or particular issues he has, just breed or age or size or whatever, history, what he might need additional support in beyond what he gets from his complete and balanced diet, and that's how I approach it. Now, if you can't do that, you can always talk to your veterinarian, you can talk to us, you can go online and play with our wizard, which asks you questions, and when you answer it, and then ba-bing, an answer pops out of the supplements that might be good for your horse.
Yeah, the wizard can be a lot of fun to play around with.
It's very time consuming because you're like, what if I change this one thing? And then you go back and do it all again and you get a different answer. So, but there's some logarithm in it, I don't know.
Yeah. But it can be a little overwhelming, especially there's a lot of different options. So luckily, Dr. Gray does a lot of training with our customer care team and keeps us up to date on all the latest supplements and research and everything like that. So if you do have any questions, you can always reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to kind of talk through it and kind of see what works best for you and your horse. And
I think we set out some of the most common, like there's a joint supplement, there's a hoof supplement, there's digestion. And for some people, what makes sense if you're going to go with like the basic is to use a multi-purpose or combination supplement, and then you have all your bases covered in one. And
one-stop shopping.
There you go. Yeah.
How many wells are in your SmartPak?
I just counted because there's 6 right now, but I need to add something, so I'm going to max it out with 7. Yeah.
You got a little room to play with.
I got one well, and then but then you can have more than one strip. So
that's asking for trouble. Well, definitely give us a call. We'll be more than happy to go through all of that with you. Well, that's it for this month's questions.
Okay.
So thank you guys for taking the time to submit those. We really appreciate them. Next month is January, which around here at SmartPak is commonly known as
JHAM,
which is
Joint Health Awareness Month.
Exactly. So for our January episode, what we're going to do is we're going to have a friend of the show come back. It's going to be Dr. Andy Canups. So he is going to do an episode completely related to joint health questions. Right. And do you want to give a little background as to Dr. Andy Canups?
Well, he's wonderful. I have a whole page on him, and I'm just going to try to hit the high points, but he's got a lot of letters after his name. So he's got
that's when you know they're impressive.
I know, he's got DVM, he's got a PhD, ACVS, which is the American College of Veterinary Surgeons, so he's a surgeon, and ACVSMR.
What does that one
Yeah,
stand for?
that's a new one. He's a charter member of a new college of veterinary sports medicine and rehab.
That's perfect.
Wait, joint.
Yeah. Commonly known as.
He did his PhD at UC Davis. He's been on faculty at Oregon State, The Ohio State, UC Davis. He's written all sorts of articles. He's co-edited and authored chapters in books. He even developed a curriculum for a certification program for physical therapy. I mean,
wow. I
could go on and on and on.
We are very honored to have him come in and do it, so I'm very, very excited for that one. But even though we have that coming up, we do have some questions that we've selected for that episode already.
Yep.
We've went through our archive and picked some joint health questions for him. But that still means that we need your questions for a February episode, February 2019, which seems like a lifetime away. But of course, you can submit those questions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our blog, and the form at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. Just make sure to use the hashtag AskTheVetVideo.
If you can't find us, you're not trying very hard.
Yeah, it's basically all Medium channels. And of course, if your question was answered in this video or in a previous one, Sophia Giaforte, I'm looking at you. Make sure to reach out to our customer care team at CustomerCare@smartpak.com so you can claim your SmartPak gift card. So until next time, make sure to subscribe and have a great ride.